Hey everyone, how's it going? So I am here once again for ShakeTube 2018. This is a read-along hosted by myself, Steve Donahue, Jason from Old Booth Chapter and Verse, and Mark from Words Everywhere. And we're just reading Shakespeare plays in the month of September. We only have one more play after this week, which is kind of crazy. It's weird because like last year ShakeTube went on for so long that for it to end so quickly this year just feels very strange, but that's fine. So yeah, this week, the play that I'm doing, we're all doing different plays. The play that I'm doing is Troilus and Cressida. And this is sort of this play appeared around the beginning of the second half of Shakespeare's career. I believe he wrote it after Hamlet and after As You Like It. So he obviously had already written some masterpieces, but he wrote it before King Lear, I think, and Macbeth and Othello. So he was kind of at the height of his powers when he wrote this play. Now, the events of this play are difficult to summarize because there aren't really that many events in this play. The one event is a big climactic battle at the very end, and you could also maybe point to when the two lovers who give the play its name sleep together. Those are about the two most notable real like plot points that actually have any prominence in this play. But essentially, it's synonymous with the events of the Iliad. So at the beginning of this play, Achilles is refusing to fight as he does in the Iliad, for a different reason in this case, actually. Instead of it being that Agamemnon has taken Briseis from Achilles, the reason Achilles isn't fighting is because he's in love with a daughter of Hecuba, who's the queen of Troy, and has sworn a vow to that daughter not to fight against Troy for the Greeks. So that's actually why he's refusing to fight. But it's sort of the same issue, basically, with Agamemnon and all the leaders of the Greeks trying to convince him to continue to fight, because he's obviously their best warrior. And so that takes up a fair amount of the play, and then another chunk of the play is taken over by this challenge that Hector issues to a Greek to face him in single combat. And all the Greek leaders want it to be Achilles, because he's their best, and he'll probably win. But obviously Achilles is refusing to fight, so they end up picking Ajax, who's this kind of lumbering buffoon. He's super annoying. He was really well played in the production I watched. But yeah, he's kind of a buffoon. And then another chunk of the play is, of course, taken up by Troilus and Cressida. Troilus is a young son of Priam. He's like in his early 20s. And he's in love with Cressida, who's the daughter of a Trojan nobleman. Her father, Cressida's father, incidentally, also is actually a turncoat. He went over to the Greeks, and so is in the Greek camp, while Cressida is still in Troy. And some of the play is taken over with Pandarus, who is Cressida's uncle, helping Troilus to essentially get Cressida into bed. And then basically, Troilus finds out that Cressida actually is in love with him, and so they do sleep together. But then, as soon as they're together, Cressida is taken away because Calchas, who's with the Greeks, has given the Agamemnon and the other Greek leaders the idea that they could trade a Trojan prisoner that they have for Cressida, because Calchas wants Cressida to be with him. And so Cressida is taken away from Troilus. And then at the end of the play, there's this big battle where where Patroclus is of course killed, and then Achilles gets mad and goes out to fight. And there's that big climactic battle, and then Hector is killed. Hector is not in this version killed in single combat by Achilles. He's killed while he is unarmed by Achilles' myrmidon, by his soldiers that he commands. So, and that speaks to a lot of the themes of the play. But first, I just want to talk about the language in this play. It's full of really metaphorically dense language and a lot of long speeches. And even the speeches that aren't long, there will be pieces of dialogue that are still like a short speech. And that can make the reading of it pretty slow. I watched a production of it this week, and I had the text by my side, and I often had to pause the video and just like read a little speech or see a few pieces of dialogue just to sort of get my head around what was going on. And so that can be challenging, but it also makes for some really great speeches. There really are some great speeches that are just really wonderful poetry by themselves. In fact, you can see right there, that big white spine there, is Harold Bloom's volume, The Best Poems in the English Language. And of course, in that, there's a big chunk of Shakespeare. And in among the excerpts from plays is 2 excerpts from Troilus and Cressida, both of which are spoken by Ulysses. And I want to read part of a speech that Ulysses gives. I don't read the whole thing because it's very long. But it's in a scene where Ulysses is talking to Achilles, and Achilles is still not fighting for the Greeks. And in the scene before this, Achilles had been sitting just outside his tent, and like all the major Greek leaders, Agamemnon and Menelaus, had walked right by him, like indifferently, basically hadn't paid attention to him, and that made him mad, because obviously he was sitting outside his tent in the hopes that they would come and give him attention to try to get him to fight, because he loves attention. So Achilles complains to Ulysses about this, and then Ulysses gives him this long speech, which goes like this. Time hath, my lord, a wallet at his back, wherein he puts alms for oblivion, a great-sized monster of ingratitudes. Those scraps are good deeds past, which are devoured as fast as they are made, forgot as soon as done. For time is like a fashionable host, that slightly shakes his parting guest by the hand, and with his arms outstretched as he would fly, grasps in the comer. One touch of nature makes the whole world kin, that all with one consent praise new-born gods, though they are made and moulded of things past, and give to dust that is a little jilt, more laud than jilt o'er-dusted. So yeah, that's just a small excerpt from that speech. I didn't want to read the whole thing because, again, it's long. But yeah, just some great poetry in here. But what I think I love most about this play is that it's incredibly irreverent. Marjorie Gerber talks a lot about this and how almost every sort of value that is expressed in this play, whether it's the value of love, of honor, of what the Trojan War is about, whatever value is expressed at almost every single one at some other point in the entire play is either made fun of or it is undercut in one way or another. And kind of my favorite example of this is at the very beginning of the play. There's a prologue where some actor speaks the prologue, and he explains he basically just gives you the background of what's going on. He basically explains the setting of the Trojan War and everything. And he says it in this very highfalutin, sort of classical way. You could imagine it coming out of Homer or like Ovid's Metamorphoses or something. So it goes like this, or this is the opening several lines. In Troy there lies the scene. From isles of Greece the princes Orgulus, their high blood chafed, have to the port of Athens sent their ships fraught with the ministers and instruments of cruel war. 69 that wore their crownets regal from the Athenian bay, that put forth toward Phrygia, and their vow is made to ransack Troy, within whose strong immures the ravished Helen, Menelaus' queen, with wanton Paris sleeps, and that's the quarrel. And so it's spoken in this very formal, highfalutin way. And then later in the play, Thersites, who's this great fool, comic character who is in the Greek camp, who constantly kind of makes fun of everything around him. He's kind of a Falstaff-like character, and at one point he just says, all the argument is a cuckold and a whore. So that's just one sort of example of how this is done. It's often Thersites who is doing the making fun of whatever the value is. Often it's also Ulysses. Ulysses doesn't so much make fun of it so much as he undercuts it with his own actions. But yeah, and Marjorie Garber talks a lot about how that makes it this very modern seeming play, sort of this idea of questioning everything around you and questioning old ways of viewing the world and old values. And I think that that's fascinating. And lastly, what I really liked about this play was that it had a very comic feel for much of it. Um, but it ends. The ending is super dark. Act. It's actually one of the most powerful, moving endings of a Shakespeare play. Outside of King Lear and the ending of Henry IV Part Two, it really is, I think, really powerful. Because everything that the Trojans are fighting for. Obviously, the Trojans are left at the end of this play. Hector killed and basically no hope of winning. And every value that they believe in has obviously been questioned throughout the play, in one way or another, whether the characters themselves know it. And they're basically just left, without much hope. And they're basically just left with Pandarus. The last scene is Pandarus walking through Troy, making references to giving it sexually transmitted diseases. So it's kind of it's a comically, I guess, dark ending. And I always love that blend of comedy and tragedy. It's kind of why I have a weakness for the romances and for the problem plays, because they do kind of mix really serious tragedy with kind of funny moments and funny elements. And yeah, so I really enjoyed reading this for a second time. I liked it the first time, but not nearly as much as I liked it this time, and I think it's a new favorite of mine. So yeah, if you have read Troilus and Cressida, whether it's for ShakeTube or previously, give me your thoughts. And yeah, anyway, I will see you next week. Bye, guys.